Welcome everyone. Today I'm gonna show you some of my favorite games that Magnus Carlsen played during his career. So if you don't know who Magnus Carlsen is, he's one of the greatest players of all time. Many regard him as the GOAT, and he's just a beast. He's the former world chess champion, and he won the world chess championship 6 times. The last one was in 2021 against Jan Nepomniachtchi. Then in 2022, he abdicated the throne because he was bored. So basically, he was bored. He didn't want to play, and he resigned the world chess champion rather title. And today I selected 4 of my favorite games that he played. But before we get into the video, please like and subscribe. It helps me a lot grow as a content creator. And as always, follow me on Twitch. But having said that, let's get into the games. So the first games I want to show you is from 2015. We are in Vaikanze at Tata Steel Masters tournament. It takes place almost every year, and some of the greatest grandmasters play there, including Magnus Carlsen. So this game is against Levon Aronian. Carlsen is playing with white piece, and he opens with the move d4, and Aronian goes for knight f6, e6, which is an invitation to play the Nimzo Indian defense, which is after white plays knight c3, trying to play pawn to e4. Black goes bishop b4, pinning the knight to the king, preventing white to go e4. But here Magnus plays knight f3, which is fine. And black striking the center with move d5. And here Magnus plays knight c3, and we got bishop b4. Now there is the first big question of the game: does white take in the center, or does white leave the pawn here? Magnus decided to take and play bishop g5. This is known as the Ragozin defense by black, where white plays this move bishop to g5, pinning the knight to the queen. And the idea is simple: if black ever tries to play h6, you're gonna snap take this knight, because if queen takes, the queen is misplaced. You actually want to exchange this bishop, because you want to put these 3 pawns on dark square, and you want to exchange the dark squared bishop. In fact, we see that after white plays h6, we got bishop takes f6 and queen takes f6, with the idea of playing e3, solidifying the center, play bishop d3 maybe, and short castle. Magnus decides to give this check first, because after white plays knight c6, he blocks the c7 pawn, which in the pawn opening it's really bad. You usually don't want to block the c pawn. And after white plays e3, we see that Magnus puts his own pawn on dark square to replace the dark square bishop. We got bishop e2 and bishop e6. Now, after white castles, we are officially out of the opening stage, and we are in the middle game. When you are analyzing the middle game, you're scanning how to make a plan. You gotta see where the imbalances are. Right now, black has the bishop pair, and white has an e pawn, and black has a c pawn, which means white has a majority in the center, and black has a majority in the queen side. So black will try to focus on the queen side to try to attack over here. In fact, we see that black goes for a6, and Magnus goes rook f to c1. You might wonder, why not rook a to c1? Rook a to c1 was perfectly fine, but probably Magnus wanted to keep this rook here to maybe advance over here. After white plays rook to c1, rook f to c1, black decide to go back to d6 with bishop to maybe target the h2 pawn and to put some pressure over here. Now we got queen d1 back, because the queen was kind of misplaced over here on a4. And now Aronian tries to maneuver its knight over to g6, maybe to create an attack. And after rook d8, we see that Magnus tries to push its pawn in the queen side. Now you might wonder, why does he do that? Because he wants to shut down the play on the queen side. He doesn't want to let Aronian move over here, so he decides to push its pawn. And after white plays knight to a4, we see that he's rerouting the knight to d3, and black put its knight on g6, and here Magnus shuts the center. Now c7 is a weak pawn because it cannot move forward, and the play on the queen side is non-existent now because the pawn are blockaded. And now Magnus can focus on this side of the board, on the king side, and we see that Magnus doubles up to put pressure on the c-pawn and move his knight to reroute, and plays basically g3 to prevent, to nerf rather, this bishop on d6. Now, after the knight f8, trying to reroute this knight, we got bishop g4. Bishop g4 is an important decision by CARLSEN, because now he decides to trade the light square bishop, because he believed that this bishop is actually a strong defender of this king, so he trades the piece off. You got queen f3. Now Aronian can choose to trade queens and go to an endgame, but as we all know, Magnus Carlsen is a beast in endgame, so Aronian doesn't want to do that and plays queen g5. And here Magnus strikes with h4, trying to attack over the king here. And after queen e7 got rook c6, which is a great move, because if the bishop ever moved, now the rook has control over the 6th rank. In fact, we see knight f6, knight a4, and here h5 is a great move, trying to break over this side of the board. After king g7, protecting the pawns, we got takes and knight d5. Knight d5 doesn't actually win a pawn, because after takes, we got bishop takes g3 with the discovery attack on the queen. And so the queen moves out of the way, and we got bishop d6. Now you start to see visually how this king feels a bit weak. In fact, now CARLSEN tries to exploit just that with knight c4, knight 95, and basically black has to take, otherwise this pressure is just too much. If you play a move like g5, you're gonna face an endgame where you're down the exchange, and probably you just lose. So black tries to take this knight, and we got not even pawn takes c5, but we got queen takes g6, and after king h8, there's queen h6 check and pawn takes c5. Now you see that this king is absolutely unguarded, and black is basically ill-equipped to guard this king, because after rook g6 and king f7, black thought that the king was safe, but the king is not safe at all, because of the beautiful move rook to c4. Rook to c4 is lights out, basically, because rook f4 is coming, and the queen and the rook with the f8 rook. Black can give a check, but this is losing, because after rook h8 we got rook a4 check and rook e6. After takes, there was Magnus plays rook to e4. There was a cleaner way to win with queen h5, king d6, but Magnus understood that rook e4 led to a winning endgame, because white has to sacrifice its queen, because now you see that this doesn't guard this anymore. And after the king move, white will take this rook, and if white sacrifice, you give first the check, because otherwise the rook takes the queen. You give this check, the queen cannot block. After the king moves, you take the queen, and this is just a winning endgame. So black resigned here. This game is really cool. I really like it. And then moving on to the second game, I chose a game from the same tournament. We are in Vaikanze, 2015 Tata Steel Chess Master, and White is playing. CARLSEN is playing with white pieces against Timur Rajabov, a very strong grandmaster. And this time we see that Magnus Carlsen starts with the move e4, and we got a Berlin defense. Now, this is an invitation to play the Berlin endgame, which is usually what grandmasters play when they want to make a quick draw. But with d3, White decides not to go into the Berlin endgame. The game plan is really simple. You want to castle, and then you want to put maybe the knight on d2, play c3 and d4 and strike in the center. And after the move d6, opening up this bishop, we got knight d2 and takes. So in the Spanish, which is when you play bishop b5, you usually don't take the knight on c6 if unless you're playing an exchange variation. But now CARLSEN takes, which is not the worst thing in the world. You are giving up a bishop for a knight to damage the queenside structure, the queenside pawn structure, and white prevents black from going here with bishop to pin the knight to the queen. And we see the same thing by black and our rook e1 trying to centralize white pieces. And here Magnus plays knight f1. Knight f1 in the Italian and the Spanish is a really common maneuver because you want to bring your knight here, and we see just that with the knight threatening to go to f5. Here Rajabov tries to play over here and forces Magnus to play the move b3, which usually is not something you want to play, but in this case it's not a terrible move. Black can go bishop b4 attacking our rook, but we can trade the bishop. We can offer an exchange of bishops, and we play c3 trying to support a push in the center. After bishop c5 we see just that with the move d4. We got bishop d6, takes, and c4. So now black has the bishop pair, but has a terrible pawn structure. The bishop over here, as we'll see later, will just get blocked by its own pawn, because black will be forced to play the move c5, as we'll see in a moment. Now we got queen e2, and instant replay. Black is trying to maneuver its knight over to either d7 or e6, and we see that this move happens because you theoretically could take, but then you lose a major defender of the position. All these pawns are on dark square, and probably Rajabov didn't like that, so it chose to play c5. The idea here is really simple. You are blocking your bishop because you believe that in the future you're gonna play a move like c6 and bishop d8 to bring it back to life, but that is too slow, because in this position there is an attack over the king side lurking, even though it's not, it doesn't look like it, but it's there. We see rook d1, queen f6, moving the queen out of danger, and we see knight h5 attacking over here. And this maneuver with the knights, actually white decides to go knight h2 to free the f3 squares for the queen. And after king h7 we got queen f3 and f6. Now it looks like black is holding everything together with the move f6, but now with knight g4 it's really difficult to hold the position. We got takes, and rook d8. Now we see the whole point. There are light square weaknesses around the king, and Magnus Carlsen exploit that with the move queen f5 check. We see king h8. You might wonder why Rajabov didn't play g6. Well, because you can just take this, and you cannot take the knight because the queen is hanging. And if you take the queen, I'm gonna take with the knight. That is why Rajab would even play g6. We got king h8 instead, and the move f4 on the board, trying to break the center. You see that this rook is lined up to the queen. In fact, we got takes, 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 and after some exchanges, there is this move, this beautiful move, rook d3. The idea is that if you trade queens, you're now in a losing endgame. Look at this bishop. This bishop stacks. You gotta play a few more moves to get it out. But in the meantime, I'm gonna harass your king. So this is a losing endgame. Black cannot really take the queen. In fact, Black tries to defend the queen, but now we see the brilliant move, knight to g7. And the idea is that if you take the queen, I'm gonna take with the knight, and you just lose a pawn. And if you're thinking about recapturing this, it's not good because I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna go to d8. It's really bad. So if king takes, on the other hand, we got queen h5, and the idea is that this is unstoppable. And if you don't defend correctly, mate will follow. But if you defend correctly, you're gonna end up in an endgame where you're just losing. So we got king takes, queen h5, with this in mind, and not queen takes, because if you play queen takes, then it is just a draw. But bishop takes, because if you do this, then this is main. This is just main. And if you try to defend this, there is this brilliant move, bishop g7 check, with the idea of queen takes e8. This was the whole point of the sacrifice. Magnus saw all of this with queen g6, bishop g7 check. Black has to go for this, and white doesn't trade because you don't want to go into this endgame, which might still be winning, but it is more difficult. Instead, we see queen e6, e5. The king here is super weak. The rook is going to d8. The queen is coming. Everyone is coming, and black tries to give some more checks, but here black resigns because there is nothing you can do. So it's seen as black mummified its own bishop by playing the move c5, but this is really bad. When black plays c5, he probably should have taken the bishop, because here he probably should have taken the bishop. This was probably the most important moment in the game. He should have taken the bishop, but instead he chose to block its own bishop, and Magnus focused on attacking the king, and here he made a beautiful attack. Now, the next game is regarded by the most as the immortal game of Magnus Carlsen. An immortal game is a game where a player sacrifices all of its pieces and plays a beautiful game. This game is from 2004. Magnus Carlsen is just an international master. I believe he was 13 years old. I hope I'm not wrong, but don't quote me on that. And he is playing with white pieces against Sipke Ernst, which he was back then a strong international master. Magnus decides to start with the move e4, and Ernst goes for the Caro-Kann defense with move c6, and we got the Caro-Kann. Now, today, the Caro-Kann is considered to be slightly worse for black, so it's not seen much at the highest level, because with engine prep, white is considered to be better with the advanced variation. But in this game, we see that Magnus goes for knight c3, and after takes, we got bishop f5, knight g3. This is all standard. And the move h4 is really thematic in the in Caro-Kanns, because you want to trap this bishop, and we see the move h6. Often black goes for the move h5, which is considered to be slightly better because you take more space. Not in this case, but for example, there is a variation in the Caro-Kann, which is called the Tal variation, which is after in the advanced variation there is bishop here, and we got h4. This is called the tal variation, and the move here is h5. This is considered to be the meta here for black. But instead we got h6 here, because in this position it's better to play h6. We got knight f3, knight d7, and here white tries to take as much space over on the king side as possible, and black can play bishop h7, and white here tries to trade the bishop and plays bishop f4. The bishop is really strong in this diagonal, and after knight f6 we got long castle. Now after some moves, you see this move, king b1 to guard this pawn, black castles short. Now when two players castles on opposite directions, it means that they want to go to war, because basically what you need to do when your opponent castles on the opposite side, you need to go pawn storm with your pawn and try to attack this king, and black will do the same. In fact, we see that after takes, white plants a knight on e5 and tries to attack over here. Now here there is a really important move. The move c5 is actually a mistake. It doesn't look like it at all. It seems like a fine move, but the thing is, this move disconnects the queen, and the queen cannot control these squares anymore. And it's important because Magnus Carlsen here plays the brilliant move knight to g6, which is a move that doesn't look possible because it looks like black can just take it. But the idea is that you can now take on e6 and it's check, and now you take here, and this is coming. This is coming. Well, you're gonna take with the bishop first, and then this, and it's gonna be mate. Ernst here tries to defend with knight to g8, but here there is nothing you can do because Magnus Carlsen sacrifices the bishop. So he sacrificed the knight and now the bishop, and the idea is that if you take with the pawn, well, we got rook h8, knight h8, and queen takes c7, and this is unstoppable. If you take with the pawn, on the other hand, we got the same thing. If you take with the knight, this is just unstoppable. So Ernst tries to go with knight f7, and after takes, we see that the king here is under severe pressure. No one can defend this king. We got king g7, rook d3, with the idea of playing rook g3. This is called a rook lift, and the most important thing in this position is that this is not bank mate because the queen defends. After rook d3, we got rook to g3 check, and it looks like black defended itself, but it is not this way, because here white goes for queen e5 check, and after queen f5, this is mate because the king is blocked by its own rook. This is controlled by the rook, and these squares are all controlled by the queens, and it is a beautiful mate. And this is considered to be the mortal game of Magnus Carlsen, and probably you can see why. Now, the next game, the last game actually that I'm gonna show you is one that I love. This game is probably my favorite games of all time, because I remember it is 2021, the World Chess Championship in Riyadh. Carlsen is playing against Jan Nepomniachtchi. I remember I was watching this game, and it was like the game started at 2:30, and I watched the first 2 hours. Then I had to do some stuff. Then I went back after 2 hours, and they were still playing. Then I came back 2 hours later, and they were still playing. This game broke many records, including the longest game in a World Chess Championship, and in fact, it is. Let me see. It is 136 moves long. So I'm gonna look at it quickly. The game is a CARLSEN setup, and the idea is that White wants to play the move c4 to open up the bishop, and here the first strange move happens with the move b3. The move b3 in this position is a really weird move. It's not really played at the highest level. In fact, this move with this move order was a novelty at the time. We got b3, c5 takes, and we got this move c4 trying to open the Catalan bishop. Now takes. Magnus doesn't trade the queens. He wants to keep queens on the board, and with queen e7 we got the knight takes c4 and b5. Now Magnus puts the knight in the center, and here Jan doesn't take. Jan plays knight b4, gaining a tempo on the queen, and plays bishop b7. Now we are out of the opening stage. It seems like Jan equalized because this bishop counteracts this other bishop. This bishop is really strong. This bishop needs to develop. And after the move a3, we got knight back here, trying to take this bishop. We got bishop b6, keeping an eye on the f2 pawn. And here Magnus pins the knight to the queen and straight up takes it. Because if Jan went to an endgame, there was a chance that Magnus, with this damage structure, would be able to win. So Jan says, "No, I'm good. I want to take with the pawn. I want to keep queens on the board. I want to keep my chances to win." And you probably shouldn't do that against Magnus. All right, we got queen d4 on the board, takes. And this is gonna be an important exchange because now there is no Catalan bishop anymore. We got queen b7 check and queen c2. Now in this position there is already some tension because black can play the move rook to c8, and white has to answer a really important question. And the question is, do you give up the queen for the two rooks? Now generally, two rooks are considered to be better than a queen, generally. In this case, maybe, we don't know. But black decides not to go for rook c8 just yet. Instead, he plays a5, trying to gain space in the queen side. We got rook d1, centralized, and now we see this move, rook to c8. And white decides to take. Now we have an imbalance. We have a queen for two rooks, and white will try to win this endgame. And we got queen to d5, and this move b4. This move b4 is really important because after white plays a4, these pawns are locked, and the dark square bishop can just attack them. We got this move e3, I'm sorry, and you see that Magnus doesn't take because he wants to keep the knight, and also this is pinned, so he cannot really take. And we see this move h4. Now h4 is a big move. Now I remember when I was seeing this, Magnus was low on time. He probably had something like 2 minutes before time control. But this move is a big overcommitment because pawns cannot go backwards. And yes, you gain space, but you give up control over these squares. And black decides to respond with h5. We got a bit of tension over here. Black can take this, and it actually takes this, but white can win this back. We got this move e5, and here black goes for e4, trying to attack the knight. Black actually wins both of these pawns. And after a while, you see that that white tries to give up the rook for the bishop and the pawn. So right now, white has the idea to give up a rook for the pawn and the bishop and go to an endgame where you have a rook, a knight, and 2 pawns, because you will win one of this, for a queen. And white will try to win this endgame. In fact, we see just that white decides to give up the rook for the bishop. The idea here by Jan Nepomniachtchi is that you can take this with check and then move out of the way. And as you see, black decides not to take the rook because he doesn't want to go into that endgame where Magnus Carlsen can just put as much pressure as he wants. He got rook a4 instead, knight e2. And now this is a really important move. f3. f3 is a dubious move because when you push a pawn, you give up control of the other pawns. You destabilize the structure. But here it is completely fine because you are gonna play a king to f2 and you're gonna slowly advance the pawns with f4, king f2, and after a while, here the players shuffle a little bit back and forth because they want to gain time. So I'm not gonna go over these moves. And after a while, we see that white gives up the rook for the bishop, and here we got to this endgame. Now this endgame objectively is a draw, but Magnus Carlsen is a magician in endgames, and we see that the plan by white is to find a way to put your pieces that all the pawns are protected. The queen cannot give perpetual check, otherwise it is just a draw, and you're gonna slowly advance these pawns. We see rook a2, and here the players shuffle back and forth, and Magnus tries to find the way to put its pieces, and we see after a while that actually white finds the configuration of the pieces and goes for e4. Now this is the most important move in this endgame, the move where you start advancing your pawns, and the moment you start advancing your pawns, they just become unstoppable. We see queen to h1 by Jan Nepomniachtchi trying to exchange this pawn for this pawn. We see check, takes, and here Magnus Carlsen tries to advance the king on the side to prevent the queen from checking it. So we got check, but Magnus escaped all the checks. As you'll see in a moment, there are no more checks, and here the game is over. After knight to g7, there is nothing Jan Nepomniachtchi can do, because if you keep checking the king, Carlsen will go over here and checkmate your king with the pawn, make a queen, and will checkmate you. This was a crazy game. I remember it was game 6 of the World Chess Championship. The match at that point was 2.5 and 2.5, and this was the game that broke the balance because Jan Nepomniachtchi couldn't heal from this loss and went on to lose the match. So as always, I hope you like these games and I hope you learned something from this. As always, like and subscribe, and see you in the next video.